I'm sharing this link in the group as well. It is your group coding, and I have added resource to practice the game logics. So this is the resource where you can practice the game logics, and once you are clear with these logics, you can further start creating this game. So the first thing that you need to do is go to this code.org project. It is studio.co.org/flappy/1. So now we need to just read the instructions that are written here and try to work accordingly. Now this says attach a block to the when click block. So this when click block is basically an event. It is an event that would do something if your character is clicked on screen. So you need to tell what happens when you click. When happens when you press a mouse click. When you press a mouse click, what would happen? You need to identify it. Okay. So what happens when I click this button? Okay. If I'm clicking this button, what would happen? I need to tell them. So for that, I'm going to use this flap here and play wing sound. And would now I want to see what happens when I click button. So now you can see that my character has now started to float in the air. So all we need to do is just practice it, and the target is to keep your bird in that black box. For that, what you need to do is just press it multiple times so that goes in the target, and once it is there, you can continue for the next one. Now it's the time for the second part. The second part is now we have another event. Now the second event is coming in. Now event, what is meant by event? So in gaming language, the event means, or the coding language, the event means everything that would initiate your character to do something. Like when click was an event, and when I clicked the button, the bird would start to flap and try to stay in the air, fly in the air. So which is working fine at this moment as well. Our object is moving, but nothing is happening when it hits the ground. We need to tell something what should happen when it hits the ground. So the game should end when we hit the ground. So we add it here and use this here, also play wing sound, and we can change this wing sound to something else like crash. Is there a crash sound? Yes. So now when your character would hit the bottom, the game over symbol is appearing here, which was not previously appearing. So this was the second logic. So first thing was, so the events was, what are the events here? The events of Flappy Bird are like, the first event was when click. When you click, your bird should fly in the air. The second event is, the second event is when hit ground. So if your character hits the ground, what should happen? You should lose the game if the character hits the ground. So we are done with two events at the moment. Now we need to see for the third event. And the third event is something like, what happens when you pass an obstacle? What you need to do is, you need to reach this point. Now when I'm clicking, you can see that I can only move either up or down, but my screen is not moving. So I need to make sure that my screen starts to move. And for that, I need to set the speed and set speed. Speed is basically how fast or how slow is the character going to move forward. Currently, what you can see is, if I do not use this code, my character only moves up and down, and it is not going forward towards that black target. Now if I want to make it go towards the black target, I need to set speed. Now when I set speed, you would be able to see that now my character can start moving forward. It's actually the character is not moving forward, the character is just jumping at its own position. In fact, the background or the screen is moving towards the character and going out of its way. So that is what is happening. That is what happens in most of the games. The characters, they stay at their places while the background keeps on moving. We will create one game with the same logic in like seventh or eighth lesson again. That would be the jumping game. Okay. So in the next lesson now we have to tell what happens when we hit an obstacle. Now an obstacle in this game is like a pipe that we saw in this game. These kind of pipes, they are obstacles. So when your character hits these pipes or hits this obstacle, we lose the game. That is what should happen in this game as well. So we need to find out what happens when we hit an obstacle. Let's say that when we hit an obstacle, we are going to play the smash sound and we are going to end the game again. Now we just need to follow the same instructions and try to hit any obstacle. Yes, so that code is now actually working. So the third event was when hit an obstacle. Lose the game. So that is what should happen. We should lose the game if we hit an obstacle. So now the next thing is how do we get score? How do we change score? How do we know that we are playing this game very good? So for that, what we need to do is score points. We need to see our progress, and we see our progress through scores. When we are checking our progress in the exam, we see how much marks did we get. So now that if we need to see that who played that game better or who was better in a certain game, we are going to ask, we are going to help ourselves through the score. So if we are getting more score, it means that we are good at the game. So there are two players who are playing the same game. So how are we going to tell that which one is a better player and which one is not a better player? So for that, we would obviously want to see the score. So let's say that all of us play this game, and to see that who is the best among us, we would see that who scored the most points, who got the biggest score. So every game, it kind of has a criteria where we can see that how do we create a score. So we are going to create score here as well. For that, we are going to just put the right block and put it at the right place. When we pass the obstacle, we score a point. Or maybe if you want to add some sound here, you can add. Now let's see what happens. So when we pass an obstacle, we score 1 point. So that is what it was the next part of the game. Now let's go towards the next code, and that is obviously now we have to see if we can still score a point after making Flappy flap either a small or a large one. Now we need to see that how can we make our character to jump higher or jump lower. Currently what you can see is when I press one click, the character is not jumping that much. I can make my character to jump more. So now my character would start jumping. See, with one click, it jumps more now. Similarly, I can make my character to jump small as well. So now with every jump, you see that this character is not jumping very high. Okay? So all of these things we can change how big the jump would be there if that character takes that jump, or how small that jump would be. We can do all these things. We can change all these things as per our. Let's go towards the next lesson, that is the seventh one. In the seventh one, we are going to see that how are we going to do the next step. In this step, let's see what the problem is. The problem is always written here at the top, and we just need to see that how can we now try changing the scene by attaching another block to one not block. So this is set scene. So we can set the scene differently also. Like now You can see that the background has changed. Now we can see that this event is in the night. Now we can change it to underwater as well to see what happens. So now it looks like the character is moving underwater. Similarly, we can change the character also. For underwater game, we can have for a game that is supposed to be played underwater, we can change our character from bird to a shark or maybe a fish. So we can do all these things, all these changes. It's basically up to us how do we play that game or how do we make that game. Now the next thing is we can set visuals anytime. Similarly, we can set the player and set the city scene also. Let's say now I change it to cave and I want my player to become bad. Or there is this bad guy also. So now you will see that this character is Batman and it is moving in a cave. Just moving. So it says that we are not using a block that we should be using, and that block is end game. We are actually using every block that we have. So now let's go towards the next problem, and the next problem is that to mix things up, we can change an obstacle also. Like this option now we have got when we hit an obstacle, we can set the score to 0. Now you will see that whenever I hit an obstacle, my score would return to 0, even if I have scored some point. I got 1 point. I got again 0, 1. Whenever I will hit an obstacle, I will lose points. And now I'm not ending the game, but I'm losing. So we can change the rules of the game if we want, ever and ever again. So this is the last part. Now we have to create our own Flappy game here. So for that, in this game we have to choose all the rules that we have learned and use them very carefully. So there are 4 basic rules that we need to understand. So the first rule is what happens when you click, what happens when you hit the ground, what happens when you hit an obstacle, what happens when you pass an obstacle. So these are the 4 basic rules that you need to follow. And now, if all of you would want to make this game, you can try and make this game. All you need to do is just open your browsers and write in this code studio.code.org/flappy/10. Now, if you enter this code, enter this URL into your web browsers, you will be able to make it. If you want to try and make that game, you can try it now. I am sharing this link in the Zoom chat so that you can open it from there. Everyone, please try opening the link that I have just shared. Once you open this link, you would be able to see this screen. In this screen, you can try to make your own game. Similarly, I can share another code with you, which you can try. And that code is here in the projects. In the projects, there is this option game with events, and in that there is this Flappy game. You can use the second link if you want to access this code, which you can later share also. So now you have to place correct blocks under the correct position so that your game works well. First thing is you need to set the environment of the game. In order to set the environment of the game, what we need to do is select the code that you will put in place for when run. So what should happen when you run the game? So that is the first thing that we need to understand. Okay. Has everyone else tried to open that code onto your web browsers? Have you opened the code on your computers? I have shared the link. Have you tried to open the link on your computers? It's better that you
Yes, sir.
yes,
Yes.
it's better. Yes, it's better that you do that and try practicing it along.
Yes.
When I practice, you can also try to practice it. Okay, first thing.
Yes, sir. I'm.
That's great. That's great. That's really great. So first thing, see what happens when you press the run button. So run button, every thing related to run button is here in these blocks. These purple blocks, you have to choose these blocks and put them there if you want to change how the environment of the game is going to be set. Once you click the run button, the game environment is going to be set. So let's set the game environment first. You can choose as per your own choice, and I can choose as per my own choice. Let's say that I would want the scene to be of this sci-fi. This is the scene that I choose now. And now I can choose a different player. Let's say that I want the player to be a spaceship. Now you can see that I have got a spaceship here in the sci-fi atmosphere. Similarly, I can change the character also if I want. It's kind of super. Similarly, we can change the character whenever we want. Okay, so just change the character and change the scene as per your own choice. So in the night, this spaceship is like moving here. So first thing we have already said. Now we need to see what else we want to set. If we want to change the speed of the pipe, we change the speed of the character, we can. If we want to uh, change the type of the ground, we can. Let's say that we don't want the ground to be like this, we may want the ground to be something like that. So now the game is working fine. Now when your character falls into the lava, you are going to lose the game. So that is how your game is going to look like now. Now the next thing that we need to do is start working on these four events. So these four are events, and when run is basically how you start the game. So let's work on the events first. So these are the four main events of the game that we have to work according to. The first event that you have to use is when click. What happens when you click the button? What happens when you click the button? So the first thing that happens when you click the button is you jump. You make your character fly. So you flap a normal amount. We can change the amount if we want, but a normal amount is fine. And we play this sound. Can you hear the sound as well?
Yes. No.
This is how our character is going to sound like when it flips. Now the next thing is that we need to do is tell what happens when you hit the ground. So when we hit the ground, we end the game. And we get crashed also. That's why we had crash here. So now let's see what happens when we hit the ground. So we are getting that. Now the next thing, when we pass an obstacle. So when we pass an obstacle, we score a point and we can play this sound. It says point here. Our game is not going to start running here until and unless we put this set speed to something. It can be fast, it can be slow, it can be low. So now you can see that the lava has started to move. It means that our game is now moving. If I do not pick up this one, you will see that the lava is static and the game is not moving. You put it here and press the button. Now our game is working. This game is working fine. All I need to do is start clicking on this button. You can see that I will not lose this game because I have not told how to lose this game. So you see that how do we lose this game? We also lose this game. There is one way that we lose this game. First is that we hit the ground. There is also another way that we use this game, and that way is when we hit an obstacle. So when you hit an obstacle, what you need to do is end the game. So we are going to use this end game. And whenever we start, we might want to start with a cheat score so we can set score to something. And when you start your game, you are already starting with the score 6. But if you always want to start your score to be from 0, so you can add 0 here, and your score to start from 0. So you can see. Now this game is actually working perfectly fine. That is the exact same thing that you would want to replicate if you have already created it with along with me when I was doing it. That's perfectly good. But if you haven't, you can do that again by practicing it from the video that we have just recorded. Now I would want to ask you guys if you have any questions and you want to ask anything. If you want to share your screen and show how your game is going to work, you can also do that now. I have stopped sharing my screen, or you can share your screen to see that to show me how you have made the course, and I can see how this is working. Ismail and Ibrahim, would you like to show me how you have tried to create this game?
Sir, I can't hear you.
Ibrahim and Ismail, can you guys show me how you have tried to make this game? Were you doing it along with me when I was doing it? If you were doing it
Sir, I can't hear you. I can't hear